This is your daily briefing and you're most welcome to it. I have not come here to go through the game with you. The voices in my head are telling me I won't find anything interesting in the numbers. If I do, it'll go up on the Boy Hotspur first and then I'll come back to you tomorrow. But just looking at the situation, I think it's important to use the language of the forums, that we don't regard any discussions that we hold in the wake, in the aftermath of the Chelsea debacle at Stamford Bridge last night as some kind of knee-jerk. There are far too many of us now singing from the same hymn sheet, and there's a limit to what we can do. I've been through this with you dozens of times. There's an absolute limit to what we can do. But I think the first thing we need to do is to come together and understand the circumstances, because then we can ponder what our move might be. So we find ourselves, we get horribly beaten, and we're now in this awful situation where we know how to play them twice again before, and then we've got Arsenal on the 16th. It's a very unnice situation to be in. And this is the default setting. This is what we've become used to. And I used the phrase green shoots with you the other week, and it strikes me that we stare at these green shoots and we hope and hope and hope, but we know it's implausible that they'll be able to sustain themselves. The cold reality is nothing is going to grow in this man's garden. And it's crucial we understand what the enemies are. And I don't mean the individuals, the personalities involved, but we need to kind of go through and rule out certain things because we've been told lots of fibs over time. And this isn't about spending. So, and I'm trying to be as straight with you as I can. I mean, January isn't going to solve our problems, and I've watched the Conte presser a couple of times now, because sometimes with the difficulty in the language and so forth, is just to get the right understanding of the nuance of what he's saying. And when he says that the solution is not in the transfer market, I think he means specifically the next one, and that the project itself that is before him, the task that's before him, is greater still than even the next window and the window after that. This is a real mess, a proper pile-up. It's not about spending. And that was always one of those things that the Levyologists came out with. I can't even be bothered to do a proper parody of them. Bring me the Harridan, Donna Marie Cullen. She'll tell you how much we've spent. It's about spending wisely. Now, nobody sets out to spend unwisely. I understand that. We've sunk endless cash into players, and they didn't work because they weren't identified by the coaches. And this is precisely the nub of the situation. How much has been, just off the top of your head, do you know how much has been spent on compensating failed coaches at Tottenham? So if it isn't about money, what is the problem? Well, the problem is the interference. The problem is this mother knows best bollocks. All the gear, no idea. Know it all, know nothings. And that's why everything at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club is so seemingly complex. This entire situation that we're stuck in right now is self-inflicted. I had a running battle for probably a few years with posters on theboyhotspur.com who told me endlessly that the buying policy at Tottenham was based upon a committee with Levy and Hitchin and Cullen and all of these creatures and whoever the coach was. Poch was asked in a presser about his involvement in the buying of players, and he snapped that maybe his job title should be changed in order to avoid confusion. And this stunned the flat earthers, as I branded them, into a stupefied silence, and they were then ejected from the building. The ENIC system at Spurs doesn't work, and I'll explain it to you in the simplest language I can. Before audiences like this existed, and the ENIC zealots were still notionally in charge of the high ground, we were repeatedly warned of the impending doom that was doing a Leeds. And to a large degree, that threat worked. Who wants to go bust and enter into the wilderness of the lower leagues? The only problem was, if you rounded up all the clubs that had done a Leeds in our lifetimes, you could fit all of the CEOs into a telephone box and write all the names of the teams on the back of a stamp. And this is something that we need to keep clubbing over the head, metaphorically, the Levyologists with. You have a business that keeps selling the same seat, and in many instances to the same people, forever. And all you have to do to keep it going, to keep that cycle going, is avoid relegation. An endless stream of cash forever. Yet we were repeatedly told that Levy was a genius. We were told that they didn't take a penny of the profits. And this is a simple corruption of language. Do you remember that video interview that they did in-house? And they said every penny is reinvested back into the club. Yeah, it is invested back into the club. Absolutely. Not invested into players, though. The bulk of it, the overwhelming bulk of it, was spent on infrastructure. Why didn't we win a trophy last season? Well, because arguably we didn't have this, we didn't have that. Yeah, but we added to the property portfolio instead. So while they're not taking a penny of the profits, technically, they're not taking a penny of the profits. They take enormous bonuses despite having never ever achieved anything. They take stock in the business. And they take hilarious salaries. And for the chosen few, there are also options, directorships in the property portfolio business, which bubbles away avariciously across Haringey and beyond. Credit where credit is due. Credit, there's a funny word. Instead of following the doing a Leeds model, Levy and co found an entirely new way to sink Spurs knee-deep in debt. Infrastructure. World-class training facilities, which only the most unworldly person, the most stupid person, would think were unique. Does anyone really believe that other top-flight sides are still doing laps around an unmown training pitch? And a stadium which its primary purpose is not football. American football, yes. Live concerts, yes. Not Spurs. Spurs comes bottom of whatever the list is, whatever the menu is, whatever the offer of the business is. Spurs is at the bottom. And then we have the business of the naming rights. Sponsors like clear messages. They like simplicity. So the simple stuff always works. Just think of any advertising tagline over time. It's always the stuff. Sky, believe in better. We hope it's chips. All of this stuff is simple, and it's stuff that people can relate to. People haven't related to this spaceship at all. The blank canvas that ENIC have created with the soul harvesting device has actually been a negative. There's no serious interest in naming rights. Levy was in charge, then he outsourced it, then he appointed a director of naming rights or whatever, and then he took over again, and now we've got some other guy in, and when things go a little bit moody, it gets wheeled out, and the press and Tottenham are very close to announcing a naming right. No, not close. Never been close. Poch was left swinging in the breeze, transfer-wise, for over 500 days. Mourinho was hired, but nobody wanted to listen to him. And Nuno was hired because installing Ryan Mason again was deemed unthinkable, even by the Kevlar-skinned Tottenham board. And now we've reduced Conte to talking about time, patience and jobs that need to be done. Work to do, says the Italian. When any manager, any coach says they need time, there are two ways of interpreting that. One is that they need time because they've got a long way to go with the players to get them through to the right level, the right mental state, blah, blah, blah. And the other is that they need to start again from the very beginning. Conte is talking about the latter option. These players are not safes to which we need to find the combinations. It doesn't work like that. As a collective, this squad is doomed. And yet our ears our ears, our eyes and ears are polluted by the likes of the Redknaps, ne'er-do-wells telling us about the squad and how blessed we are, packed full of internationals, amazing infrastructure. It's a load of old rubbish. It gives me no pleasure at all to tell you that I predicted all of this years ago. Realistically, where do we go? Well, I'll tell you this, and mark these words. We can't be sold because the investment is already blown out. The debt is far too great for anybody to swing in and take us on. They won't see a penny back in their lifetimes. And this is the killer. We have investors. We've already been invested in. Joe Lewis is one of the wealthiest men on this planet. This is the end of the rainbow. Ordinary decent businesses forcibly ejected from their premises. Social cleansing. Google the phrase poor doors Haringey. I don't have any cheer for you. I don't have any chutzpah. I don't have any lies. And I wish I did, because this is miserable. Just a constant cycle of expectation, hopes being dashed, and then humiliation. I don't think the next two games against Chelsea are going to be particularly edifying. And Lord knows what happens in the North London derby against the odd lot. It is soul destroying. It is absolutely soul destroying. And the thing is, I wasn't alone. You know, I'm not the prophet come down off the hill. There are a good many people out there who saw all this coming, who foretold it. And it's not because we're miserable doom mongers. It's because what was on offer didn't make any bloody sense. So again, I'm sorry, but despite them, good luck and keep it Tottenham.